On this Connect to the Capitol Extra, the South Carolina House of Representatives worked late into the night on Wednesday to pass DEI legislation in the style of President Trump's executive order recently signed in Washington.
A bill co-sponsored by dozens of the House Republicans passed 82 to 32 after 8 hours of debate. Now, this is a real discussion that impacts government, universities, and businesses in the state.
Join us to dive deeper into the issues of diversity, equity, and inclusion are Representative Jermaine Johnson, the Democrat of Richland County, and my longtime friend and television counterpart, Democratic strategist Antoine Seawright. Guys, thanks for joining us.
But Dave.
But Antoine, for those of you who don't, Antoine and I have been doing television now for 9 years, discussing real issues that go on, and I am grateful for the extra time that we get to have here on Connect to the Capitol. Guys, thanks so much for being a part of this day with us.
Absolutely, thank you.
It's good to be with you all, and congratulations on what you're doing, and certainly to my state representative who's in the fight every single day. Shooting the ball and blocking shots.
Which you did plenty of that.
Yeah.
Yes.
And this is one of my #1 constituents sitting right here with me. So, I got to make sure he's happy. He's going to keep voting for me.
I had Todd Rutherford in the seat the other day, I understand. Let's talk real quick. You had a lengthy day this past Wednesday, but there was a lot that led up to the House of Representatives taking up a bill to basically eliminate anything that has to do with diversity, equity, inclusion. How in the world did we get here?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me today, because this is a very, very important situation and bill that we essentially just passed the other night. And the very first bill that was written was something completely just atrocious. It was so bad for this state that when we started pointing things out, we started looking at things, it was going to cost this state $86 million. $86 million of taxpayers' money to implement this bad policy. And when that happened, the Republican Party, they decided to take a deeper look at this and see how it was really going to affect individuals, not just from a business standpoint, but from personal lives, a personal life standpoint. And when they did that, they decided to pull that back out. Then they tried to get it passed in the budget proviso. And once they did that, it was still equally bad in the budget proviso. And that's when we decided to really stand up and say something about this, because there were some horrible things in there that we tried to fix. We tried to give honest fixes in this bill. And what happened is it just got so ugly that we just had to stand up and speak out.
What you're seeing in real time is what we describe in politics as the consequences of elections. The Democrats in Washington and in South Carolina, unfortunately, are fighting with alligator arms behind their back. And so we are in a posture where we're punching above our weight in both the House and the Senate here in South Carolina. But look, when you look at the Republicans and what they're trying to do on this diversity, equity, inclusion, exclusion legislation, it simply means that their priorities are not in line with the people of South Carolina. I don't see research, I don't see polling, I don't see people at the gas station or the grocery store asking, can y'all pass legislation that's going to exclude diversity, equity, and inclusion? So I think they're out of touch. And there's an old saying in Southern politics that says, show me your priorities, I'll show you what you value. It seems as if they value pulling our communities apart versus pulling them together. They made diversity, equity, inclusion all about race. I think that's wrong. Diversity, equity, inclusion can mean many things, whether short, tall, race, gender, size. The #1 beneficiary, according to most research, of diversity, equity, inclusion has been white women. And as I said on another program, diversity, equity, inclusion is inclusive in who we are as Americans. Think about it. Our motto, E pluribus unus, out of one there are many. That's diversity. The 13th and 14th Amendment that gives us equal protection under the law. That's as equity, inclusion, liberty, and justice for all. And so these things are true to us as Americans. And then as South Carolinians, I see Jermaine's pen. The fact of the matter is we are a state that has not passed hate crime legislation, but yet we're passing legislation to include diversity, equity, and inclusion. That's going to cost the people of South Carolina and the state from lawsuits perspective and for dollars on business.
I think we can all agree that we are stronger as a state and as a nation when we celebrate our diversity instead of expecting everyone to be just a cookie cutter version of the next person. And I think, I know I've heard so many stories of people people who've been impacted positively by DEI policies, what we've seen in place over the last years, and are honestly scared. Folks are scared about what could happen. But I want to delve a little bit into the actual policy. You were sharing that the original version of this bill had some bad policy, and then now we have this version that passed 82-32. So if you could share a little bit about that original bad policy and how we ended up with this version.
So the original policy was so bad that it would allow men to go into domestic violence shelters. It was so bad that it would have banned the Sisters of Septima program, which is aimed at getting more black women to be teachers. And we know we have a teacher shortage in this state. It would have banned the Call Me Mr. program, which is a program to get more black men to be teachers in this state. I mean, it would have killed policy for cancer patients. It would have just destroyed everything. It would have banned colleges and universities and businesses from taking Delta flights. From doing things like that. It would have banned contractors and subcontractors from doing business with the state. And people who have long-standing relationships with the state, they would have been cut off completely. I mean, it literally would have destroyed families. It would have destroyed lives. And because of that, we have to make sure we take a deeper dive at all this legislation, and then we went to doing something different, and we kind of delved into it and rewrote something.
It seems as if Republicans in South Carolina want to literally just pour bleach on our state and make everything like literally white, almost reflective of days where we had segregationists running our state. And South Carolina has a deep, dark history when it comes to racism, bigotry, and hate. And it's sad. And this idea that we're going to cut, copy, and paste what's happening in Washington and then control, alt, and delete all the progress we made in South Carolina is a very dangerous game, because what message are we sending to future South Carolinians who are going to grow up in a South Carolina that doesn't look like South Carolina today, certainly does not look like South Carolina of yesterday. So the South Carolina of tomorrow is going to include people from all walks of life, socioeconomic, race, gender, and everything in between. And so what message are we sending to our children and grandchildren? You add that on top of what they're trying to do in terms of prioritizing private schools in our state. We're really trying to go back to segregated times in a real way in our state.
When did DEI become the bad thing? When did it become the boogeyman? I mean, was it a bad thing when we got Volvo to come to the state? Was it a bad thing when we got Boeing to come to the state? Was it a bad thing when we got Scout Motors to come to the state? When did it become the bad boogeyman thing that is so bad for the state?
Well, and that's one of the interesting things, and we've had discussions on and off the air, Antoine and I have for years, but it is so easy to take a label like that and be for it or against it without really knowing what's in it and what it is. Because none of us wants to be like anybody else. We're all unique, created by God, unique individuals. That's right. And that's a level of the diversity side that we talk about. But what is it that you ran into in the House in this discussion that made you realize I don't have the level of equity and I'm not having an included voice in this?
Yeah, so there was an amendment that was put up by Representative Andy McDaniel, and it said no public funds will go to white supremacy programs. And she put that amendment up, and I sat there and I said, they're definitely going to allow this one to go in. I said, because these are some good folk. We saw the Patriot Front on our steps at the State House. Everybody's condemning them and condemning these white supremacy groups. And I said, you know what, these individuals in here, they're not going to allow this to go in. But to my surprise, nobody said anything. They walked right by, they put their hand like this for the table sign, and nobody condemned it at all. And I got so upset, I got so angry, because I said, we talk to each other about our families, about our kids. We go on trips together. We go across the street. We hang out. We check in on each other. And you did not have the courage to stand up for what is right in this state.
So look, I'm going to follow up on that one real quick, because if you've been in and around a legislative process sometimes the whips are doing their jobs and the majority leaders are doing their, minority leaders are doing their jobs to try to keep things moving. And so it's like, no votes, no votes, no votes. Does that detract from a representative form of government while we're trying to do that?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Because a couple of years ago, you can go back and look. We were doing Convention of States, and there was an amendment to go up there that said y'all can open up the Constitution, but don't touch the 13th and 14th Amendment. That amendment came up, and it also was tabled. But then I got up there and I gave a speech about that, and I said, maybe y'all weren't paying attention, so I'm gonna give y'all the benefit of the doubt to bring this back up. They brought it back up, and then they passed it. Fast forward to now with the white supremacy one, they did not bring that back up. They continued with it to be tabled, but what they did is when they realized what they did, they just went ahead and they pulled the entire proviso out of the state budget, and that's how we got to where we are today.
You know what's so sad about this is that people are going to be on to the next thing. Nobody's going to care in the House of Representatives what happens next, because the bill and the legislative process will go on to the Senate. We'll see how and if the Senate deals with this. But if it doesn't get dealt with this year, the politics of an election year in South Carolina next year are going to be more critical, more consequential. So I'm afraid that it will be even more severe and more dangerous if it gets added in the Senate because of the politics of next year. The other piece is, I think we have to take a step back when we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion. What does this say to veterans who are beneficiaries of DEI? What does this say to seniors? What does this say to small businesses? What does this say about the progress that so many African Americans, Asians, Americans, Hispanics, women, and all these other subgroups who fall under that, the contributions they've made to this experiment called South Carolina? Are we going to reverse course and say none of that matters all of a sudden? And what about the future contributions that many South Carolinians will have to offer going forward? What does that say about that?
And that's one of the reasons why we do this show.
It really is. We do that so that we can continue to have these deep conversations and look at how issues that sometimes can get pushed to the side all too easily can get pushed aside in favor of elections or the next bill, the next tragedy. But we need to be looking at all of these issues in the big picture. So we were talking earlier about even how our state leadership, how the governor is very committed to competition and to being a competitive state, to bringing in businesses from around the Southeast, around the country, around the world. And what does it look like to them if we're then turning around and saying, well, we want you, the business, but we don't want your people, we don't want your DEI, we don't want your diversity in our state?
Well, think about the kind of companies we have. They're not like lily white companies.
Yeah.
I mean, you think about Volvo. I mean, you think about some of these companies, and you think about the kind of reputation they have. They don't just sell to white customers. They don't just have white employees across the country. And so, what does that say about the future workforce? Businesses have to respond in this moment, because I think that's going to be the only way that the legislature will buckle to what the realities are and the consequences of that. Think about that flag and all the controversy that it put a stain over our state for so long. That's where we have to be careful not to roll back progress in this country and our state. And South Carolina has a history of being last in the things we should be first in and first in the things we should be last in.
Yeah, the thing that has really upset me is they have reduced something as beautiful as diversity, equity, and inclusion to an acronym. And and they changed this acronym to the boogeyman. And when they made this acronym, see, I said this in my speech last night. I said, I don't know I don't know y'all's meaning of DEI, but my meaning of DEI is a duly elected individual who definitely earned it and was done entertaining your ignorance. I said, other than that, I don't understand what y'all are talking about when it comes to DEI, because there's nothing scary or bad about diversity. There's nothing scary or bad about equity, and there's nothing scary or bad about inclusion. And we must embrace that. That's what makes our state so beautiful. That's what allowed me to wear my dashiki to the State House the other day and say, hey, listen, this is my heritage. These are my ancestors. This is what makes us so beautiful and united here. Don't be afraid of what's different. Embrace it.
Again, and we are putting diversity, equity, and inclusion in one single lane, and we're making it about race.
Yes.
I think that's the dangerous thing. Yes. When you add on top of the fact that there's this movement across the country that South Carolina is trying to cut, copy, and paste to whitewash history and only teach certain parts of history, or history that does not challenge the narrative about how we move forward. And we're seeing all these things that are happening around us, and it has a trickle-down effect to South Carolina, and that's dangerous. Because we have to, the South has already a stained reputation What does that say if people don't want to live in our state anymore and South Carolina becomes a predominantly white state because of how we legislate?
That's exactly right. And when we talk about anti-DEI legislation, when we start to create this us versus them mentality, us, the people who don't need DEI, and them, the people who do, then we seem to forget that, as Dave said, we are all unique.
Yes.
We are all uniquely created, and we all have diversity. We bring it in our own ways, whether it's your sex, your race, your religion, your veteran status. We can go on and on and on. Antoine, you named a few, but there are almost infinite ways we can bring this. And all of that gets whitewashed out when we pour bleach over our state.
Think about this, what we just did a few months back. We did something so beautiful. We stood together, we were united, and we passed some legislation to bring the first single monument dedicated to an African American to place on the State House grounds dedicated to Robert Smalls. I mean, the united front that we presented for all South Carolinians to say, listen, this is an African American here, but he was a South Carolinian first. He was an amazing man. He escaped the trials and tribulations, and he showed grace. He took care of his captors until they passed. He did all this amazing stuff for our state. Look at how beautiful that was, the beautiful show of just unity that we have for the state. The beautiful show that we had, and it's coming up on 10 years for the Emmanuel 9. The beautiful, hate won't win. Hate has no harbor here in South Carolina. Look at all the beauty that we had there, and then now we want to go back with this crazy legislation that we just passed last night.
Loretta Lynch, a dear friend and a mentor, said it best as she was leaving the Obama administration as former Attorney General of the United States. She said, we may read from different books of the Bible, we may call our gods by different names. In other words, she was saying that we have all differences amongst each other, but the one thing we do love is this country. And in South Carolina, I would say the same thing. We may worship in different places, we may read different books, we may call ourselves by different names, we may have different geographical challenges and needs and assets, but we all love South Carolina and what we hope she should be. And that should be the thing that brings us together, not these trivial things that will divide us for the sake of a political moment. Because when Donald Trump is no longer the president, and when Trumpism is not top of mind, what is that going to say about the progress we've rolled back in this state because we buckled to a political moment? So
let's dig into that a little bit longer, because we've been talking now for going on 15 minutes or so. Wow. It's a good conversation. This is healthy debate. The reason that we actually do this show is so that you can actually hear the real conversations that we may have over drinks at a restaurant and talk for a while. And it actually allows for a real conversation and not some level of play for the other cameras, not the ones in the studio, for the folks back home. There were some folks who came up there during your discussion talking about the fact that we need to do this because we were patriotic Americans, or this needs to be based upon merit, as if there is no merit unless you are given a hand up or hand out. And so I want to dig into this question. Is part of the opposition that you hear because people think that you can't get to where you need to go if you don't have some bypass? Is that what they're arguing?
That is definitely their argument. For some reason, they believe that the acronym DEI means unqualified, or they think DEI just means black and poor, or they think DEI means uneducated or unprepared. And that is the problem that we have here, because DEI does not mean any of those things. It means, let me give an opportunity to somebody who otherwise may not have had that opportunity. And that is the thing that we need to have, because not opportunities are not given to everybody. Consider myself. I went to 7 different high schools. I had, a 0.8 GPA my freshman year. I was homeless. I lived in motels. But somebody saw something in me. I graduated from the College of Charleston. I went on to get my master's degree. I went on to get my doctorate degree. I played professional basketball. I'm now Dr. State Representative Jermaine Johnson. That's because I was given an opportunity, not a handout, but an opportunity to work my tail off and become state representative of South Carolina. People need to understand that's exactly what this is. It's not about giving somebody something. I absolutely am qualified. I absolutely earned it. And people need to understand there's a lot of people out there who are like me, but they just don't have the opportunities.
And what's wrong with expanding the table? Think about if we didn't expand the table. We would not have the technology in cell phones that was invented by the African Americans. Think about accelerating the pace of space exploration. 3 black women who are no longer hidden figures. Think about the progress we made with the traffic light because of African Americans. Think about this. You look at these lights in the studio and you look at the lights all around outside. You know why that happened? Because Thomas Edison, a white man, decided to link up with a black man who was the son of slaves, Louis Latimer. Thomas Edison's light bulb would not work without Louis Latimer's filament. When those 2 white men from the South, Louis Latimer, son of slaves from Boston, Massachusetts, when they came together, the filament and the light bulb came together because Thomas Edison's light bulb would not work without their filament. Together they lit up the world. What we're saying in South Carolina is Thomas Edison and Louis Latimer should have never hooked up. We should exclude them. Louis Latimer should never be in the conversation. Well, if Louis Latimer was never in the conversation, Thomas Edison's light bulb would have never worked. We have to step outside our comfort zones if we want to continue to light up the world. That's what we should be focusing on, expanding the table, expanding the opportunity that exists, not just in South Carolina, but across this country.
DEI isn't about preventing people with merit from getting into good jobs. It allows the people with the merit to overcome the systemic racism, the sexism, all the isms that they may encounter in order to rise to the position that they deserve to be in.
Catherine, think about how Dave, think about how we celebrate the fact that we now have women in boardrooms and courtrooms. We had a woman vice president. We have women in the Senate and in the State House. That's diversity, equity, and inclusion. Think about a Capitol that did not have African Americans. Think about a State House that doesn't have an Asian American or a Latino. Think about an America that doesn't have an inclusionary vision with people with disabilities and special needs doing what they do. That's what we're separating when we talk about getting rid of diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Powerful.
So, one last question. If this moves forward, again, we're going to have to go through the whole Senate process, and we know how.
And lawsuits.
You could have the graveyard of the Senate, and it will just go there to die, or they'll take it up and they'll do their work on it. If this is the case, from a representative standpoint, you're part of the minority. You don't have a majority voice. What can you do? What will you do with this issue then moving forward?
Yeah, I appreciate that because all we can really do is to get with our majority party and talk to them and pray that they will stand up and do the right thing. You heard me talk about that a lot in my speeches over the past couple of weeks. Do what's right. Stand up and do what's right. I don't care if you're Republican, Democrat, Independent, Green Party. I don't care if you're clear, whatever it is. Just do what is right. Do what is right. So if it does pass, unfortunately, what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to stand and hope and make sure that the lawsuits go through, provide them with any information that we need to go through, and be ready to testify against this bill. And I will stand ready to testify in all walks of life for everybody.
We the people have to respond. People watching this at home are going to say, "What can I do?" Some will say, "What the hell can I do?" You can't do everything, but you can do something.
That's right.
And we the people become even more critical in this moment. 10 years after Franklin signed the Declaration of Independence, a doctor met him outside Independence Hall in Philadelphia and said, "Do we have a monarchy or do we have a republic?" Franklin looked at her and said, "We have a republic if we can keep it." If we can keep it have been the 5 words that have kept us humbled and progressing forward in this country, and I believe in this state. If we can keep it, meaning a democracy does not work if we are not active participants in it. And that's why we, the people, have to step up, send a message to the Senate, send a message to the House that we do not need legislation or things that will divide us. Instead, we need to find ways to bring us together.
That's right.
That's right. So it really is about contacting your representatives, contacting your senators in particular at this point, contacting businesses and applying pressure on them to apply pressure to the state to make sure that the state does remain competitive and doesn't get whitewashed.
And if I can say, look, don't contact the ones that you know on the right side of history.
That's right. That's right.
Don't call them.
That's right. You don't need to call me. I'm with you already. I'm with you already.
Call the ones who are literally trying to implement racist, bigotry-like legislation that's going to embarrass our children and grandchildren for years to come.
Yeah.
I asked that question to them. I asked, what are you going to think when your children and your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren now have to look back at their grandparent and defend the crazy way that you voted on this legislation? What do you want your legacy to be? What do you want them to remember you for? I mean, in 150 years from now, when none of this stuff is even going to be around, when we're not going to be talking about race, we're not going to be talking about any of these things, people are just going to be people. Everybody's going to be, mixed together, and all of it. We're going to be beautiful folks of America. What do you want them to say about your legacy when they have to defend what you did in 2025?
Oh, that is a whole nother discussion for a whole nother time to connect to the Capitol. Gentlemen, thanks so much.
Yes.
If you've enjoyed this, make sure that you follow us on Facebook. Connect to the Capitol, because we want to be able to have these kind of discussions
and educate the public, and let our viewers educate their friends and their neighbors.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This table is proof that diversity, equity, and inclusion matters, and it works.
It does.
Jermaine and I, two Black Americans, different walks of life. We are examples of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Although we may look alike, and although our hair may be the same,
shorter.
we have fundamental differences that one can look at us and say diversity, equity, and inclusion exists between the two of them, because we have differences. And we've got to learn how to align ourselves and celebrate the things we have in common, but also not bicker and debate about the things that may be different about us.
I will say this, for 9 years, you and I have said one thing whenever we've been on television together, and it is this, and you understand this. We always have been talking about the fact, how do you create a better South Carolina? There may be different ways of seeing it, but we're all looking for that better South Carolina.
And Dave, I've made an edit to that statement, particularly over the past year or so. We've got to create a better me. Because if I create a better Antoine, I can create a better family unit. If I create a better family unit, the chances are I can create a better neighborhood, and then that will trickle down to a county, city, state, a country, and maybe even a better world. So we've got to make sure we manicure the individual. A better Jermaine, a better Catherine, a better Dave, a better Antoine, and perhaps we will get to a better South Carolina.
Gentlemen, I have watched you two on this show, and I have thoroughly enjoyed watching you two discuss the advances that we can make in this state. And you all are the example, the prime example of what this means for all of us, of what this state can be, that we can talk together and we can work things out, and our differences should not be something that are around to divide us, but to bring us together. So I appreciate what you all have done together, and I just hope that you all continue on what you all have been doing.
Dave is a little, I'm a little hip hop and R&B, he's a little country and rock and roll, but but it's good music.
And we've been doing that for a long time. From a couple of a white couple over here with two of our black friends sitting around. If you're not doing this at home, if you're not going out to a meal, do it. Do it this past week. This has been one of our longer, extended versions of Connect to the Capitol Extra. Thanks so much for being a part of it and taking the time to watch this. Share it with your friends, share it on Facebook, and we look forward to seeing you next time.